Today, we're taking a look at the wear and tear of the most different items in the game, and whether it is worth repairing something, or when it makes more sense to buy something new. Most items in Russian Fishing 4 wear down over time while we are using them. So either they take additional wear on their durability, or we simply consume the bait that we are using. With natural baits like, for example, worms or dough, the quantity of the bait is simply consumed with every fish that we catch. With these baits, we can of course see the number of baits in our inventory, and with every fish we catch, that number is reduced. But how does this work with artificial lures? We do not lose artificial lures when we catch a fish. However, the artificial lure loses durability over time. And if we take a closer look at this under the Details tab, we can clearly see the wear on the artificial lure there as well. And exactly this wear is what we are going to look at right now with the different materials, with the different items in the game. And at the end of the video, I will also show you how you can avoid unnecessary wear. First of all, however, we take a look at what actually causes wear. In very short terms, wear is caused by usage. So whenever we use something, wear is created on the various components. So if you take a look at your setup and then click on the gear icon here, you can see all components of your current setup and their current wear values. Here we can now see the separation between the rod, the spinning reel, and our lure. And if we now take a closer look at the rod in detail, we can of course also click on the eye icon here and receive additional information about the rod. Because we always have to look at wear in relation to the values of our rod. This means that all items which have a load capacity will over time have less load capacity due to wear. And this happens in the exact same proportion as the wear increases. So, very simply explained, right now we have 2.3% wear on the blank of this rod. And these 2.3% wear have to be subtracted from the load capacity of the rod. That is, from the 125 kilograms. That means this rod can currently carry approximately 122 kilograms and no longer the full 125 kilograms. This applies to all rods and to all items in the game that have a load capacity. That also means we have to subtract the wear from the fishing line. Let's take a closer look at this line in detail. I am now using a line with a load capacity of 13 kilograms and 39% wear on the line. That means I'm not fishing with 13 kilograms, but only with just under 8 kilograms of load capacity. So if you are wondering why a freshly caught 5 kilogram carp suddenly takes so much time in the final stage of the fight, then you should definitely take a look at the wear in your setup. The same thing, of course, also applies to leaders. Leaders are basically just line as well, and accordingly, we pay attention to all values in our setup that have wear and a load capacity. The percentage of wear is always subtracted from the load capacity in the same proportion. But how does this work with lures? Right now, we are using a lure that has a relatively basic quality. Accordingly, this lure wears down significantly faster than a high-quality lure. You can recognize the exact quality in the shop by looking at the stars on the different products. Here we only have 2.5 stars, and in this other case, we have 5 stars. So you can already estimate the quality of the product, whether the product tends to wear down quickly or whether it is significantly more durable. Now the question is, what effect does this wear on your artificial lure actually have on the lure itself? And even more importantly, what effect does the wear of the artificial lure have on catching fish? And the answer is very simple. No effect at all. There is absolutely no difference whether you are fishing with an artificial lure that is 100% intact or whether you are fishing with an artificial lure that already has over 90% wear. The only thing that can happen is that with the last fish you catch, the lure may simply break at some point. And then the lure is of course completely worn out. That means you can use artificial lures, just like in this case, up to 99.9%, and after that, you can simply replace them. But besides the blank, the rod of course also has additional values. Here, 2 more values are displayed. However, the handle section actually has no effect at all, or rather, no real wear. Where we do have regular wear, that is on the line guide rings. And depending on which line you are using, and also how many large, heavy fish you fight, you will naturally get that much wear on the line guide rings. As already mentioned, the line plays a very decisive role here. There is already a current tutorial video about all properties of fishing lines. Make sure to check that out so you are fully informed about which properties a line has, and what effect the line also has on your setup while being used. Through the continuous use of our reel, the reel naturally consumes oil. So simply by using the reel, we already get wear on the oil. With spinning reels, it is the case that we only get wear on the oil when we are reeling in. With round profile reels, that means ultralight low profile, as well as standard bait cast reels and conventional reels, we already get oil consumption when casting. And then of course, additionally again, when retrieving. So with these reel types, we have double oil consumption, because with these reels, the spool also rotates during the cast. This is different compared to spinning reels. Here we simply open the bail and the line can run freely without the reel itself rotating. So this is also an important factor that you need to keep in mind if you want to fish with bait cast setups, right? Because your oil will wear down significantly more than on a spinning reel like this one. There are many different oil qualities available. And besides all the original oil types, meaning the oils that are already installed on your reel when you buy it, there are also additional oil types that are more specialized for the specific use case in which you are currently using your reel. But when do you use which oil? And does it even make sense to buy a different oil than the original oil? For most reels, the original oil is already chosen in a way that it fits the reel you are using. And for most fishing styles, it is actually already a very good choice. Especially in the early stages of the game, you should not invest too much silver into high-quality oil. But starting in the mid-game, meaning when you maybe bought your first mid-game carp setup or a spinning setup, then it slowly starts to make sense to maybe buy higher quality oils for your reels. And of course, only once the original oil is already worn out. That means first, use the original oil and do not buy a new reel and immediately replace the oil. The original oil is still a good oil, and if you maybe replace it a bit earlier, then during the first repair afterward, you can use a higher quality oil. When exactly you repair which part, we will also take a closer look at that in detail in just a moment. With the original oil types, we actually have almost no information about the oil itself. Then there are special oil types, like for example, zero gravity. This oil even reduces the casting weight of a reel. So if you're using a bait cast reel and then use this oil, you will get an even lower casting weight on your reel. However, this oil also has a relatively high wear rate. So this oil is not worth it if you just want to slightly optimize the casting weight of your spinning setup. That means if you bought a cheaper spinning setup, so a reel with poor casting weight, it makes no sense to use this oil just to improve the casting weight. By doing that, you waste an enormous amount of silver. First, you buy a bad reel that you will replace sooner or later anyway, and then you also constantly have to pay for repairs because your oil wears out. So this is a very bad idea if you want to compensate such a bad purchase with this type of oil. On a high quality reel, you can of course gladly use this oil, but even then, you always have to keep in mind that this oil wears down significantly more than other oil types. A series of oils that is basically always worth using are the different special oils from the company Stab. Starting with the base oil, which you can use as a standard oil for all normal reels, for example also for your first mid-game setup. Then there is the reactive oil, which is also very well suited for small low-profile reels that you use in the ultra-light range. And then there are 2 oil types with the term solid, namely solid and extra solid. Here I would say You can simply skip the solid and go directly into the range of extra solid, because this extra solid oil is explicitly suitable even for very heavy reels, all the way up to saltwater multi-reels. So all large reels, 10,000 size reels, 20,000 size reels, 30,000 size reels, and of course also the large conventional and round profile reels. For these reels, we naturally use the extra solid oil, which actually has the best wear values and lasts for a really long time. So, when should you ideally replace the oil? For that, it's important to understand what the oil actually influences. With increasing wear on the oil, the wear on the drive shaft and on the ball bearing also increases. So the higher the wear on your oil is, the sooner the wear on the drive shaft and on the ball bearing also increases. And because these two components are significantly more expensive to repair than simply replacing the oil, you should pay attention early on to using the original oil up to a maximum of around 29% wear and then replace it. However, if you buy your first large conventional reel for saltwater fishing and you have spent maybe $40,000 to $80,000 silver on it, then it absolutely makes sense to replace the oil a bit earlier, somewhere between 15% and 20%. So especially with extremely expensive reels, you replace the oil a bit earlier, switching from the original oil to a high-quality extra solid oil, for example. This way, you have less wear on the drive shaft and on the ball bearing with very expensive reels. When you use such a high-quality oil, you get significantly less wear on the drive shaft and on the ball bearing, even if the wear on the oil itself is already relatively high. Nevertheless, you should still pay attention to starting to replace the oil somewhere around 30 to 40%, because the less oil you have, the more wear you get on the drive shaft and on the ball bearing. So to summarize once again, for your first reels, simply use the original oil. From the mid-game onward, you can already start using a slightly higher quality oil, when the original oil is at around 20% to 29% wear. And for your high-quality in-game reels, replace the original oil much earlier, somewhere between 15% and 20%, so that you can use the high-quality extra solid oil. And when you use this oil, you can let it wear down to 30%, 40%, and then regularly renew the oil. Now we have taken a detailed look at the oil. Next, we take a look at the other components that make up the reel as a whole. And depending on which component it is, there are different values at which you replace or repair these components. So a reel is not just one single part. If your reel shows 14% wear, this initially only refers to the drive shaft and says absolutely nothing about how much drag power your reel still has. Here again, the same rule applies. If you can no longer finish the fight with a 5-kilogram fish because your drag is already at 45% wear, then it does not matter at all what the wear value on the reel says, meaning how much wear the drive shaft has. What matters then is how much wear your drag system has. A part that wears extremely little is the spool head. With the spool head, we also have no direct effect on the fight. We only have continuous wear on the reel, and depending on the line you use, you naturally get more wear on the spool head. And the other way around, you also get more wear on the line if the spool head is already significantly damaged. So similar to the line guide rings on the rod, it is the same with the spool on your reel. There is therefore an interaction between the line you are using and the spool head, or the line guide ring. Next, we move on to the drag system. The drag is, after the oil, the second most frequently repaired part on your reel. That means, depending on how you fight fish and how much you stress your reel, the more wear you naturally get on your drag system. Here as well, we will of course take another look at the end at how you can reduce this wear. And because the drag also has a load capacity, or rather a drag force, we have to subtract the percentage here as well. So right now, we have 15.8% wear on the drag, with a drag force of 31.7 kilograms. That means we no longer have 31.7 kilograms of drag force, but only 26.7 kilograms of drag force. So with 8% of wear on the drag force is reduced by the same amount. Then there is also the ball bearing. And with the ball bearing, we also have no direct effects. We simply see continuously increasing wear through the use of the reel. And just as already explained with the oil, the wear on the ball bearing increases significantly more when the oil has also been significantly worn down. Yes, and the next component on our reel is also extremely important because the drive shaft also has a load capacity. However, this value is not shown in the game. This value is repeatedly determined and calculated by players and is regularly shared in various lists online. But keep in mind, these numbers and values do not come directly from Russian Fishing 4. They are calculated values, so do not take these numbers as 100% accurate, but only as a guideline and as a rough orientation for how much load capacity your current drive shaft has. In this case here, we are looking at the Beluga Avenger 10,000, and this reel is said to have a load capacity between 98 and 100 kilograms. In some lists, you will see that it has a load capacity of 99 kilograms. As I said, these are calculated values that have not been confirmed 100% by Russian Fishing 4. So when you look at these values, it is best to reduce the value once again, so that in the worst case, your drive shaft does not break. But the big question is, why does this value not actually exist in the game? And what is this value even important for? When it comes to pulling out extremely large fish in the endgame, we build our setup in a way that we can fully utilize the maximum load capacity of the entire setup. If we are doing saltwater fishing, for example, fish can bite there that weigh several hundred kilograms or even several tons. And of course, we cannot land these fish by slowly tiring them out with a drag force of 34 kilograms. So in this case, it is necessary that we do not tire the fish using the drag, but instead close the drag, and the entire power of the full setup then stops the fish. That means we are no longer braking with 34 kilograms, but instead we look at the entire setup here. Then the weakest part in this setup would now be 181 kilograms of braking force. And depending on which hook the fish has taken, there is of course also a load capacity there, which is also not shown in the game, but hooks also have their own load capacities. And as just mentioned, the entire load does not go onto the drag, onto the 34 kilograms, but onto the weakest link in the entire setup. And if we now assume that the hooks can carry more than our leader, then we have 181 kilograms with which we can suddenly break. However, this is where the big risk comes into play. We break instantly. As soon as the drag is closed, the only buffer we still have is the leader material, minimally the line, and of course the rod. Accordingly, the action bar at the bottom immediately escalates. And if you close the drag and your setup is not built correctly, then in the worst case, your leader will snap. Or if your setup is built completely wrong, then of course your rod will break. This special fishing method, using the full load capacity of your setup with a closed drag, is only recommended for extremely large fish. Things like catfish, very large sturgeon, or of course for saltwater fishing. With all other fish, for example also when carp fishing, you also get an extremely increased chance of the hook pulling out. And on top of that, you do not even build your setup that heavy when fishing for small 30 to 40 kilogram fish. Or rather, you do not even have the option to build your setup like that. That means the load capacity value of the drive shaft is only important if you actually want to tire a fish using the power of the drive shaft. And as already mentioned, this is important for saltwater fishing, for catfish fishing, and for sturgeon fishing. In all other cases, this drive force value is simply misleading. I regularly receive questions about this drive force of the different reels, and because this value is so special and repeatedly causes confusion, this value is not listed in the game. Nevertheless, we of course still use the knowledge that comes from the community, so we gladly use such lists to see how much load capacity the drive shaft of our current reel has. Because based on that, you can estimate at which percentage of wear you should repair your drive shaft. The very large conventional reels for saltwater fishing, meaning all reels that are recommended in the video, What to Buy in the Endgame, have a load capacity with which you can safely use a 181 kilogram setup and also close the drag. Nevertheless, with something like a Tiger Limited 40, you should always pay attention that the drive shaft does not wear down too much. Because this reel has approximately 270 kilograms of gear power. That means for the Tiger Limited 40, if you have around 30% wear on the gearbox, then the gearbox can still carry approximately 190 kilograms. And if your setup is equipped with 181 kilograms, then it slowly becomes time to bring the gearbox into the workshop. With the large, heavy conventional reels, meaning everything above the Tiger Limited, not only does the price increase, but the gear power also increases step by step to well over 400 kilograms. Accordingly, with such large and heavy reels, you can safely let the gearbox wear down to around 50%, and you will still have enough load capacity to use this reel with a closed drag. But when should you ideally repair the different components of your reel? When the wear on your various components has progressed, you will see this warning symbol at the bottom while fishing. When the warning triangle lights up, some component in your entire setup is 50% worn or only has half of its load capacity left. So, if you have not noticed it before, at the latest when the warning triangle lights up, it is absolutely possible that several components now have so little load capacity that something can break. So regularly pay attention to what your current wear level looks like and how your components are doing. Very important, as already mentioned earlier with the oil. Regularly check the condition of your oil so that the drive shaft and the ball bearing do not receive unnecessary additional wear. So regularly refill the oil. And of course, also keep an eye on how much drag force your drag still has. This is of course the most important value because you notice this the fastest, and especially when you are in the mid-game and start fishing your first larger carp with your mid-game setup, you will naturally get noticeably more wear on your drag very quickly. Accordingly, you then have to decide where and how you want to fish. If your setup has just come fresh out of repair, you can of course use it very well to fish for large fish. If, however, you already have around 30% wear on your setup, you can of course still keep using it, but then it might be less interesting to go for large carp. Then you might instead fish for tench or for bream. This way, you can continue earning silver with the same setup until the wear on your drag becomes so high that fishing also becomes less fun. Or you end up at around 40%, and then it slowly becomes time to repair your drag. The same, of course, also applies to the two components that do not have a direct influence on fishing, namely the ball bearing and the spool head. With those, you should simply keep an eye on them and make sure that these two components do not exceed 50% wear. And if the wear on your drive shaft is already above 30%, it is best to make sure that you do not fully load your entire setup anymore. So in the case of your mid-game setup here with the Nagear and the Karma Mector, you could of course load this setup with more than 22 kilograms. But to protect the entire setup more, you simply use less load capacity on the line or on the leaders. And accordingly, you also put less stress on your reel. When you then want to repair your reels and rods, there are of course different workshops at the different waters with different prices. As already explained in the video about shops and workshops, there are workshops with very good prices, and of course also workshops where all components are available. So if I want to repair all components on my reel at once, then repairing at the Wolchow is already a very good idea, unless we are using reels from the company Beluga. Then we of course go to the Beluga Flagship Store and have them repaired there for significantly lower prices. A huge advantage at the Wolchow, however, is that we can also buy the high-quality oils there with silver. In the original Beluga store, only the original Beluga oil will of course be installed. Otherwise, at the Wolchow, we can also have all other components installed entirely for silver. So we see here, all components replaced in this case for the Tagara 10,000. This currently costs me 5,000 silver, and it takes 10 days, 10 hours in real life, during which you must be online, or rather 10 days of in-game time, during which you cannot use this reel. A very important piece of information that is not obvious at first glance. It is hidden down here under details. And here we can already see that not only the individual components like the drive shaft, the ball bearing, the drag, and the spool are repaired, but that the broken components are actually replaced and refunded. So we see here on the invoice that the drive shaft is newly installed for over 5,000 silver. But we also receive a credit for the old drive shaft in the amount of 4,000 silver. And exactly these values differ between the different workshops at the different waters. If we now look at the Wolchow and only select the drive shaft and the drag, this requires 4 days of repair time. We see the labor costs of over 600 silver, and of course the prices and refunds mentioned earlier. The total cost here is 2,200 silver. At the winding rivulet, however, the same repair would only cost 1,800 silver because the purchase price of the drive shaft and the reel drag is significantly lower there. But the labor costs also differ between the Wolchow and the winding rivulet. However, at the winding rivulet, we can only repair these two components. And another very important factor is the repair duration. At the Wolchow, these two components would take 4 hours. At the winding rivulet, they already take 7 hours. And here you have to decide whether in those 3 hours, you might already earn significantly more silver with this reel than what you save by repairing at the winding rivulet. And as already mentioned, since this example is a Beluga reel, we of course go to La Doise, to the Beluga Flagship Store, and repair it there. Because there, we get even better prices, around 1,800 silver with 4 days of repair time. This is of course the huge advantage of Beluga reels, but also of Zima reels. So always pay attention. Where are which components the cheapest? Or does it simply make sense to let your reel wear a bit further so that as many components as possible actually need repair, and then repair everything at once, resulting in fewer downtime periods? So always think carefully about which water you repair your reels at and which components are really worth repairing. And also make sure that wear does not increase unnecessarily, because especially with these refund values, there are always jumps in the refunded amount. So repair the different components before the next big jump. These price jumps usually occur at clean percentage values, like 30%, 40%, 50%. With increasing percentages, you receive less refund, and accordingly, the repair costs you more. So always keep an eye on it. When components are at around 37% or 38%, go and repair them already, so you do not accidentally end up above 40% wear after the next big fish and end up with increased costs. Yes, and ideally you do not have that many costs at all, because you simply do not push your setup to the absolute limit. That is of course a very important point. That means, on the one hand, that you use gear-friendly materials, for example with the line, so rather monofilament line instead of braided line. And of course you also set your drag quite loose. And when a big fish bites, you naturally let the fish escalate first. So it fights at the beginning and runs off first. And once it has calmed down a bit, then you slowly increase the drag. In this case, it could very well be a pike right now, which could bite through my leader immediately. So let the fish tire itself out a little first until it is tired, and then you increase the drag step by step. The higher you set the drag, the more wear you get, meaning the more pressure is applied to your setup. Right now, however, I'm only using a 4 kilogram leader, a 5 kilogram line, and I have a drag of 10 kilograms here. That in turn means that my drag, which can handle 10 kilograms, is currently only being loaded with 4 kilograms. So even that is not really bad for the drag at all. Here, the entire load is now naturally going onto the leader, and accordingly my leader is currently the component with the highest wear. So the drag I have here, with 10 kilograms of drag force, is now being loaded with a maximum of those 4 kilograms. And accordingly, the drag does not immediately start to burn, even though the fish is currently fully escalating. If, however, in this case, I were standing here with a 15 kilogram line, and a fish would bite and run exactly the same way, but with a 15 kilogram line, then of course the full power goes straight through the drag force, and accordingly, the drag is then loaded to the maximum. What is absolutely crucial for fishing at the North Sea is the constant pumping of fish. So if you want to put less stress on your blank, then you pump the fish less using the right mouse button. The more you pump into the blank, and this is of course always the case at the North Sea with very heavy fish, the more wear you also get on the blank of your rod. So press the right mouse button less if you want to fish more economically. And generally speaking, if your setup simply cannot handle targeting big fish, then just do not target big fish. There are countless smaller fish with which you can earn silver extremely well and with which you can progress very well in the game. So you do not have to torture your setup to the maximum just to get silver and experience points. Of course, that kind of thing is fun from time to time, but to progress continuously in the game, it is absolutely not recommended. In this case, I am now simply holding my rod upward without pressing the right mouse button at all. That is also a perfectly valid option if you want to maintain constant pressure in the blank. So just hold upward with the mouse without pressing the right mouse button. And here as well, a lot of power is now going on to the line guides. In this case, this thin braided line is now literally digging into the line guides. Despite all that, I am only fishing here with 4 kilograms, and accordingly the pressure on the line guides is currently quite low because it is only 4 kilograms. If this were now a line with, let us say, 15 kilograms, then the load on the entire setup would of course be significantly higher. The fish is slowly getting tired. In the meantime, I have of course already increased the drag further. This is most likely more of an asp. A pike would probably have bitten through already. And now, shortly before the end, we slowly move in, and then we immediately get to the next point where you can react in a low wear way, namely the moment when you land the fish. This is of course also extremely important when carp fishing. Simply use the net. So, when the fish arrives here, and it is significantly heavier than what your setup normally carries, just use the net. Every fish that is in the water is lighter than when it is flying through the air. Accordingly, we try to lift it slightly and then place it into the net. If you let the fish fly through the air first, because it is only a light 7 kilogram fish anyway, on your 30 kilogram carp setup, then sure, that works easily. And I do that from time to time as well, especially in tournaments where it's about catching many fish. But it always comes at the expense of your blank. So every single time you just let the fish fly through the air, you are of course also loading your blank. So much for the different wear values and for repairs in the game. I hope that all of this helped you. If so, leave a thumbs up. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel, that helps me in return. And then I will see you in the next video, or maybe in the next live stream. Until then, tight lines.